This episode of Rookie Hunter is brought to you by the Wild Sheep Foundation. Become a member and join the Lesson 1 Club at wildsheepfoundation.org. We're also brought to you by Sika Gear. See our full lineup at therookieHunter.com. And don't forget North Arm Knives. Get yourself a blade, northarmknives.com. This is live, so you guys can make a little bit of noise, so it sounds like there's people in here. Thank you. How's everybody doing? Good. Thank you for coming out. First things first, does anybody listen to Rookie Hunter? Yeah, a couple of you. So, we usually like to start with a nice cold brew. Kel, what's on tap?
Stanley Park Brewing. I've got a Noble Pilsner. It's pretty good.
Nice. I got the lager. Big thanks to these guys for supplying beer for all of us tonight. And I think there's quite a bit back there. So feel free to keep it going. And I think it'll make this a little bit more entertaining too. So Kelly and I started this podcast way back in, I think it was March 2016. And the whole point of it was just to get together and drink beer together, basically, and record our hunting journey. And we didn't really expect much to come from it other than just to get together and have fun. So to come here and have a full room with all you guys is pretty cool. So again, huge thank you for coming out and doing this. Yeah, it's awesome. Huge thank you to Filson for hosting us. Round of applause. Yeah. Backcountry hunters and anglers. We got members in here? Yeah, cool. I'm sure you can sign up. It's not that expensive. It's like a case of beer or something is the cost of admission to that club. So if you guys aren't members, it would be cool if you signed up and joined us with BHA. So Kelly and I have known each other for a long time, and we played in a rock band for a number of years. So the last time we were on stage together was 10 years ago or something like that. And
back in the college days.
The college days, yeah. So it's fun to be back on stage together, doing something. Something different.
I feel naked up here without an instrument, though. Prefer to have a guitar in my hands, but we'll see how this goes.
So the theme for tonight is why is hunting so hard? And I'm assuming most of you hunt and know that it's not easy. So I think we're going to have some pretty unique perspectives. See, there's some empty stools here. We have some more people joining us. So I think it should be a fun conversation, and I'm excited to hear what everybody has to say tonight. And at the end of the show, we're going to do a Q&A. So if you guys have questions, start thinking about those now. And I think we'll have a good at least 20 minutes to open it up to you guys to ask us whatever questions you want to know. But I think we should bring the rest of the crew out. They're hiding out back there somewhere. Jenny Lee, Chasing Food Club. We got Mark and Curtis Hall, the Hunter Conservationist. And, there you are. Dylan Ayers from Eat Wild. So I thought it'd be nice if you guys would introduce yourselves. Jenny, let's start with you. Just tell us a bit about yourself and why you started Chasing Food Club.
Hello, everybody. So I started hunting about 2 years ago on my own because I had this obsession with food. And I met an amazing community of folks that was sharing all these interesting lessons with me. And I just wanted to share these lessons I was learning from all these individuals that I crossed paths with during my journey into hunting. And that's how Chasing Food Club got started, sharing those stories.
The Hunter Conservationist is fairly new. Mark, you've been writing and everything for quite a while, so you've been at it. But tell us about what you guys are doing and why you started that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we launched the Hunter Conservationist podcast July 1st last year. We're up to 15 episodes now. The primary impetus behind creating the podcast was some inspiration, from Dylan and Mike and Kelly, actually, seeing that they, had the guts to get out there and put themselves out there and start these conversations and share their lives with people. And so that inspired me to start writing a few years ago, outdoor writing, and then eventually to start into the podcast. The podcast is about conservation science and responsible hunting in Canada. I felt there was a big gap in this nation that was talking about the Canadian conservation and hunting and issues and stuff in this country, and it was something that I saw as an opportunity to fill, to create the conversation for this nation.
Anything you want to add?
Yeah, hey, I'm Curtis. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Hunter Conservationist podcast. Pretty much his brainchild. He started it all, and he's the brains behind the operation, but you can see he's a little bit salt and peppery, so he needed some help with the technical side. So that's where I come in. I run the equipment, but yeah, no.
Beautiful. Well, I think we'll kind of jump right into things. Oh, Dylan. Sorry, I forgot about you. You don't really matter.
Well,
Everybody knows
already,
who you are anyways. So.
Yeah.
Eat Wild.
Eat Wild, yeah. No, but Eat Wild started maybe 7 years ago to try and make hunting more accessible to urban folks, and through a series of workshops and courses. A couple years ago, I took on starting a podcast, which I was like hopelessly underestimated the challenge involved with recording, which is kind of pathetic, seeing as like some of my very best friends in the world are recording artists and are engineers and stuff. And I just thought you could record a podcast with this iPhone next to your, in the tent next to the river. We we had a great day sheep hunting, and what did we learn today? So it's evolved since then. I'm slowly progressing and improving and trying to get better recordings. And really, I'm just trying to tell stories along the way about hunting and adventures. And Jenny, my hunting partner, asked when we were just coming back from a bison hunt, and she said, "What's your podcast about? Is it supposed to be educational or funny?" And I'm like, "It's supposed to be both, right? Just about adventures." So anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. I think I found my niche, just being a goofball and see how it works.
Yeah, nice. Storytelling is kind of what we want to get into next. And with the theme of why is hunting so hard, we figured we would sort of focus first on the sort of the physical and the mental side of things, because I think we can all relate to that. And I know Kelly's got some good stories just through our hunting career, through all the ups and the downs and that. So Kelly, maybe start off and give us a couple of your physical and mental challenges.
Yeah, for sure. From the physical side of things, I think the most physically demanding hunt that I've had has been the first time we went up north. Alaska Highway, hike in for sheep, first try, kind of, let's see what happens. We're driving up there, and I've kind of got my trail book, and they're like, are you going to be able to find the trailhead? Do we know where we're actually going? I'm like, yeah, look at the black dots. It's right here. So we get up there, can't find the trailhead. We end up finding a trailhead, go down there a ways, we find the river. I'm like, yeah, I think we're going, this is looking pretty good. Horse trail, it kind of splits up. All the horses, once they get down to the river, they kind of do their own thing. The guide splits up, they kind of work in a group, and then they'll get back together on the other side and take off. Mike was actually, he had the right train of thought, because he saw the saddle in the mountain that was in the distance, and he said, that guaranteed the trail goes up through here, we should just push along. And we had a couple, myself and Garrett with us. We ultimately said, no, I think we should just follow the river back. We'll get to the Y, and then we'll follow the one we're supposed to be on. That took a good day or two out of our trip. It was just a mess trying to get around this Y, and then we're hiking on River Rock, and just, it's a physical struggle with all that weight. That took about 2 days off of our 8 to 10 day hunt, and we didn't come out of that hunt with a sheep or anything. We actually switched it into a elk hunt later on. But just having that weight on you, and it's a marathon, not a sprint, is what we always heard from sheep hunters. So it's a super cool experience. I wouldn't take that back for anything. But I think I lost about 8 to 10 pounds on that trip. I was losing a pound a day. We never had a chance to just set the gear down, set a camp, and we were setting down camp, pulling it up, setting down camp, pulling it up. It was just, that part of it was super hard physically. Yeah. I mean, physically, I think that's the top of my list. From a mental perspective, you can go multiple ways mentally. I think mentally and physically is all tied together with that challenge, and kind of, that's, I think, why we hunt quite a bit, is to kind of search for that challenge and adventure. But I was kind of going to go with this spring bear we got a couple years ago. We were out last light, when we were talking to people, they said, it'll be the last 15 minutes of light is when you're going to see that bear. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Pulled the trigger, thought I had a good shot. Bear took off. Sun went down totally. By the time we gave it 20 minutes, a half an hour to kind of, okay, let's go down, check it out, it was like dark. We had headlamps on. Did not end up finding the bear that night. Didn't see any sign, no blood on the trail. No fur, no bullet mark, no nothing. So that was a long ride home. And we were a ways out there. And I knew that we were going to have to go back in the morning, or I was going to have to go back in the morning. I couldn't even really sleep that night. I figured I would take my dog with me. So what happened, I got up about 4 in the morning, got Norris in the truck, took off, made it up there, and I found him. I found the bear within like 20 minutes. It was a good shot. It, killed the bear right away, and ultimately harvested all the meat and used it all. And the story ended well, but mentally, that 12-hour period was just, it wasn't good.
Brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of
doesn't
people
feel good.
have been in similar positions where you just don't know what happened, and there's no way to find out until the sun comes up the next day.
Well, and a lot of times you don't find it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then that extends much beyond
Yep.
that. It's not just one day, it's a whole year or 2 or 3 that it stays with you.
Yeah, so I mean, my tip for recovering an animal, if you find yourself in that situation, is bring your dog with you the next morning, because I was even headed in the wrong direction. He kept pulling me over here, and sure enough, the bear was kind of in a depression in the ground, and I don't know if I would ever found it. So,
Most physically demanding thing I think that ever happened to me in hunting was when I was in my early 20s. So I would have been in the peak of my physical prime at that time for running around in the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, hunting elk. And my uncle and I, on opening morning, hiked into a basin where I'd got a bull the year before. No bull there. We pushed on up into the mountain, and we were hunting above an avalanche slide. And this was a really unique area in the Rockies. Normally you think of the avalanche chutes just being like these narrow strips. This was the entire side of a mountain, probably about 1 kilometer to 1.5 kilometers long, of just alder. The whole mountain was an avalanche chute. We worked our way across the top of it. Bull was bugling. Long story short, we got the bull. We put him down on the far side of this big avalanche chute. We went over, we processed him, completely deboned him with the plan of side cutting through the alder and catching the horse trail in the basin where I'd got the bull the year before, and then take him out that way down to the trucks. If you've ever got caught in alder ever in your life, you cannot contour across it, because that stuff is growing out of the mountain like this. It keeps forcing you to duck under and duck under. And we got caught in this sea of alder, and I mean, like 8 hours later, we were in this. We didn't know where we were. We didn't know how long it was to the bottom. I fell on this hillside, and I actually, the alders with a big pack, and it was the biggest bull I've ever got. I actually fell down into the alders, and I was suspended in the air. You know those films and stuff where they find the pilots from World War II and their chutes hanging in the skeleton? Well, that would have been me if my uncle hadn't have been there. And so he's trying to get me out from these big spring-loaded alders. The antlers let go. The sword tine flew back, hit him in the forehead, laid him out cold on the side of the mountain. You know, we struggled, like we physically struggled. There reached a point where he was actually, my uncle was physically spent, and he had to drop his pack on the mountain full of meat. And I kept pushing, and I had to stop, and I had to keep taking meat off my pack, dropping it and dropping meat off my pack. When we finally got to the bottom in the pitch dark, we had a river to cross. We got to camp. I have never, ever been physically spent like that in my life. I was dehydrated. The next morning, I couldn't talk. I could barely walk. My muscles were suffering from dehydration. We never went back on that mountain. We never went back on it. We never got the bull off. Like, we had meat up at the kill site that we couldn't get. I just physically couldn't do anything, you know, the next day. That's never happened to me in my life. Yeah, and that was definitely the most physically stressful thing. I mean, that was mentally hard too. I remember, you know, the morning sitting in camp, and I could look up actually where the bull was, and I could see it, and I'm on my knees, like dry heaving. I felt so sick that there was an animal up there that I never got all the meat off the mountain. So mental and physical. Probably the toughest mental thing I've ever gone through in hunting. You know, I'm third generation hunter. I grew up in a long line of hunters and trappers, and I actually quit hunting once for a couple of years. And the reason I quit hunting is because of two people that are in this room. One of them's my son, and one of them's my daughter right there. And both these kids' births did not go well, especially hers. I sat out in a waiting room for 2 hours not knowing if my daughter or my wife was alive. Like, I went through that. I had problems with that afterwards, and I broke down, and I became really hypersensitive to the whole life and death thing with two little kids, and having gone through nearly losing two of them. I could not cope with hunting. For a couple of years, I just couldn't put myself out there. But it was actually these two kids, as they grew up, and their love for the outdoors was just natural, that brought me back into it. But, you know, I spent a couple of years wanting to be out there and not wanting to be out there. It was a really confusing time. And yeah, mentally, that's the toughest thing I've ever gone through.
Curtis?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to draw a goat draw 3 years in a row. And so the most physically demanding hunt was that 3 years of almost every single weekend going out every day for a goat. Every day we went out was
probably... He was 3.
But yeah, every day that we went out was just physically draining. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with where mountain goats live. They're at the top of the gnarliest, steepest places you can get to, which is what makes them so cool. But there was one day in particular, and it was one of the last days in the third year of this kind of 3-year goat hunt that I was trying to get a billy. And I grew up, and years before I was born, my mom shot this big, beautiful billy, late season, just filled out, had the big furry pantaloons, and I was like, I want a late season goat, which means late November, 3 feet of snow up in the mountains. And this one day that we went out, we had spotted them the night before, put them to bed. We got up really early, and of course in November, you don't have a lot of daylight, so we left well in the dark. Started making our way up this mountain. We're in snow this deep. We get up to, I'm pretty sure it was an old burn, hey, where we were going up. And so it was just deadfall after deadfall after deadfall. It was nasty going. And we pushed for 8 hours climbing over deadfall. We actually had like mountaineering crampons that we would put on so we could walk 20 feet above the ground on all this deadfall and not slip off. It was that nasty. And it kept going forever and ever and ever. And it was one of those mountains that was a false summit. So every little bit you're like, I can see skyline. There's the top. You get up to the top and it's like, oh man, there's another like 500 yards until the next summit. So it's like we go. We get up to the top. There's another one. And it went on forever. And we finally get to the top, and we just crest the last little bit, and we kind of get into this basin, and right there, 50 yards away, there's the herd of goats. And it was just a mad scramble. They kind of see us, and they start moving, and I ended up throwing the rifle up, made a shot at the one billy. He was like, hey, the one at the back, that's the billy. Take him. So I made my shot, clean miss, right over his back at 50 yards. All that effort, 3 years in, and that was it. Yeah. And of course, being late season, it was like we basically watched this herd of goats go up over the next ridge and kind of drop off the backside, and we're like, well, it's going to get dark in about 2 hours, so we need to turn around and get back down. So we spent all that time getting up there, missed the goat, and slogged all the way back down. That was probably the most physical time I've ever had. And mentally was actually this last season. I had a buddy, he's only been hunting for about 2 years. He called me one day, and he was pretty distressed. He said that he had shot a whitetail, and he had wounded it, and it got away on him. He's like, hey man, I know you've been doing this a lot longer than I have. Can you come and give me a hand finding this buck? I was like, sure, absolutely. So we went out in the morning. We left pretty early, got out, and he was like, I'm not going to take you to where I shot it. He's like, because there was a really good blood trail. I'm going to take you to where I lost the blood trail, and then we can go from there. We hadn't had a lot of snow. This was mid-November. We hadn't had a lot of snow at the time, so it was really, really hard to see where he was going. The blood trail dried up pretty quick, and there wasn't a lot of snow to track where he went. And we basically spent from just about dark to dark following his footprints. And he kind of stepped back and was like, can you do this? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And it was to the point where trying to follow this buck through the woods, you'd see a track going this way, and you're like, okay, 24 inches in front of that track, there should be another track. So I would sit there and I would scan the ground. Oh, that looks like a track. I'd move on. And I went dark to dark, track by track. And we ended up not finding him. And that was a pretty tough day. You know, we both got in the truck at the end of the day, and he spent the next 3 days looking for him and just couldn't find him. And that was, pretty mentally draining from the fact of losing an animal, but also just the mental strain of being that focused for that long, trying to find every single track to see where this buck went. That was just pretty draining. But.
Jenny?
Okay, so Mike, I would argue that mentally and physically, it's kind of the same, right? Because you guys have heard of like old man strength, right? They're like, how's this old dude beating me up the girl's grind or something like that? And it's because, well, he's mentally conditioned. He knows this pain is over, and he's experienced it over and over again. So in my 2 humble years of hunting, I think I experienced kind of 2 moments that really kind of changed things. I'll let the stories kind of blend in together. Oh my God, I sound so much clearer. Excuse that. Okay. So the first point is I experienced the valley of despair. And my second point I'm going to bring up is clear and concise communication without ego. Okay. And this is all has to do with mental, which kind of drives into physical. Because has anyone heard of the D. Kruger effect? It's like this graph. And it talks about kind of your level of knowledge versus your confidence. Okay, and this man was brilliant because on the graph, when you just first start hunting, you don't know squat. So your level of confidence is on peak of Mount Stupid. That was me, my first year of hunting. My first year of hunting, I did a fly-in caribou hunt with Kaylin, who's in the room here. We didn't know squat, but we got it done. Second year of hunting, you decline because you gain a little bit of knowledge, and then you hit the valley of despair. It may take you your first season to experience this. It may happen in your second season, and for some, you may be stuck in the valley of despair for years. And for me, it happened spring bear 2019. I was on the island with Tash, who's also in the room. And let's just say, I never saw an ass that big again. It was the biggest bear I've ever seen, and it got
Are
away.
you talking about Tash?
That's not very nice.
Tash, you're looking really good, by the way. You shed quite a bit of weight. Congratulations. So it wasn't you. But, and you know, I was stuck, after that spring bear hunt, I was stuck in that valley of despair for a while, because the more I knew about hunting, I was just, this is hopeless. I'm never going to get anywhere. I'm never going to see that huge giant bear ever again. I kept chasing that high, and I never shot a bear that spring season because I let every small bear pass. And I was so defeated, and I drew a tag for a mountain goat. That was my second year. But, you know, with this graph, it says once you're stuck in the valley of despair, there's hope of getting out. You just gain a little bit more knowledge, and your confidence level will go up. It'll never be a mount level stupid ever again, but it'll go up. And so by the time I got ready for this mountain goat hunt, second year in, I got a little cocky because my confidence level went up, and I never trained with a pack all summer. So I was basically dying, but there's hope. Because day 8 and 9 of this hunt, your body just accepts the pain and you just hustle on for 12 hours a day. It was a 4-day pack out. So I guess my point there is, if any of y'all are in this valley of despair right now and you hit that wall, just keep going, because it's going to get better as you gain more knowledge, and you'll dig your way out of there. And that's mental and physical. And my second most valuable point that I kind of learned mentally is clear, concise communication without ego. Because I think the biggest lesson I learned is, I'm going to throw down some fighting words right now, but hunting is all ego. And so it should be, because it's a noble sport. You know, who can say, I tracked, I killed, I butchered, and I cooked the animal I'm feeding you? You know, most folks in this 2-kilometer radius would be like, that's some Lord of the Rings shit. What are you talking about? So it's you know, so when we're communicating with each other, it's a lot of ego, and ego is never good. It never goes well. And I've had some of the mentally most challenging things that have happened to me is during hunting is through the tough conversations I've had in finding my hunting partner, having patience with hunting partners, leaving buddies behind and saying, hey, I'm not going out with you this season. Or telling somebody I felt uncomfortable in a situation. You know, before I went on my mountain hunt, Nolan Osborne, who's also in this room, the best piece of advice he gave me was, hey, if you ever feel uncomfortable or unsafe, speak up. And ego gets in the way of that, and you don't want to speak up, and you end up coming back with injuries that last for months, or you end up falling and getting hurt, and so you got to put that ego aside and have these honest, clear, and concise conversations. And that took me 2 years to learn, because a lot of times I left there, I sat during hunting season with my ego bruised, sitting there with the bags of mixed emotions, because I wasn't able to speak up, and speak up in a clear, concise manner. And also, not only speak up in a clear, concise manner, but be empathetic. And understand that, you know, if somebody's telling me something that's hard, that's hurting my ego and hurting my feelings, it's probably not that easy for them to communicate that with me, and being compassionate. And so, you know, at the end of the day, if we put all our gear at home and all our guns and bows, we're all just trying to eat some meat. So that's my experience.
Nice. Dylan?
I'm pretty lucky. I feel pretty privileged because I'm a physically fit 43-year-old man that quit smoking a long time ago now, so I can actually climb mountains, and I could, if I just kind of go at her, I just plod away, and I can get wherever I need to go. And that's
43?
44 in a couple days. God, but I feel pretty privileged,
And single.
Thanks.
Ladies.
He's part of the raffle prize.
But I do feel pretty lucky. Like I'm very fortunate. So like I can do some types of hunts that are maybe more I wouldn't say aggressive, but require more stamina and strength. And I feel lucky to be able to do those hunts. But what I thought was cool this year, and some of you would have met my friend Larry. He's 82 years old. And I actually grew up hunting with a bunch of old guys. Well, they weren't old; they were 44 when I started hunting with them. Now it's been, lots of years, like 30 years. So now they're getting on, right? And what's really cool is seeing them transition how they hunt and still being successful in their later years. And so you don't necessarily need to go climb a goat mountain to be successful. It doesn't have to be hard in that way. This year, Larry, at our whitetail camp, we had the most challenging whitetail hunt that we've had, we've ever had. There's very few whitetails in the valley we've hunted for 30 years. And so what was so impressive is that Larry, he had psyched out this spot, which he's no doubt been hunting probably for 40 years. He knows this one particular spot that typically holds deer and big bucks. And he set up his little ground blind in there, and he put some alfalfa out and maybe a salt block out in his spot there. And he may have even baited it, a month or two before it kind of, got in there and tended his bait on his, which is legal in British Columbia. You're allowed to bait deer, and especially if you're an 82-year-old man. And anyways, so he dedicated his whole trip this year to sitting in his blind and waiting for things to come together. And he had seen no deer for 3 straight days. He tried another spot out, and then on maybe like day 6 or 7, he went back to his blind and he sat there, and he said he saw something he'd never seen before in his 50 years of hunting in this valley. There was like a full-on deer party that happened right over top of his salt block lay. Big bucks ripping by, does everywhere, little bucks going by, like all the deer in the valley just happened to be like ripping around in front of Larry. And he said he couldn't get a shot at the big one, and he shot the biggest white-tailed deer that I've ever seen come out of that valley. So the adjusting your physical approach, or you just don't have to be physical necessarily and aggressive about how you approach it. You just have to be kind of smarter and persistent. I think that's one thing that I'm thinking about. But the mental part, which is probably on the same hunt, I could just relay. So I really love whitetail hunting, and I approach it as I recently learned. Well, I guess I hunt white. I didn't know this, but maybe you're just supposed to sit around and wait for whitetails to come to you. But I was taught to just still hunt, like just walk through the woods and sneak up on them and shoot them. And I was taught to do that at a young age. And so I like doing that. I like trying to sneak up on them. But it's harder and harder to do if there's no deer around. And there's fewer and fewer deer right now. So over the course of a week in my favorite hunting spots I've been hunting for 30 years, and I have perfect hunting conditions. So sometimes, like, if you get like a bit of rain on the ground and it softens up and you can kind of sneak around, and especially if it's raining a little bit and it takes the sound down for everything, so like there's no cracks and crunches, and like you can really sneak, right? And so I was sneaking through all my favorite spots this year, and I didn't see a deer on a couple days. Like, didn't see a single deer. When normally I would see 14 to 20 deer in these spots and see a number of small bucks or little bucks or whatever, and get lots of excitement and opportunities, and maybe screw up a couple times and not get a shot off. But this year I went through like 7 days of like honestly seeing like 2 or 3 deer, and my heart was breaking because I was seeing so few deer, and so mentally that was challenging. Like just like knowing that the ecosystems are changing. Things are changing, and that breaks my heart. But the other thing about hunting that I tell myself over and over is that, like, I know how to do this. After 30 years of doing this, I'm pretty good at sneaking along in these spots that I know deer live. And if I just keep doing the same technique over and over and reapplying it, it might take 7, 8, 10 days, but eventually there's going to be a buck bedded down at the base of a tree in a deery spot, and it's nice and quiet. And he's going to stand up and look at you, and you're going to get an opportunity to shoot it. And so I saw one mature buck, happened to be on the last day. It actually had to be at like 9:58, and my turnaround time was 10 o'clock on that day. I had to I told myself 10 o'clock, head down, and I looked at my watch at 9:58, and I was like, I should just bust it. And I was like, I got 2 more minutes. I'm going to finish hiking down this little valley, or this little ridge I'm on, and sure enough, this deer stood up, and I got him, and that was at like 10 o'clock. So the persistence and just kind of applying what you know works and sticking with it. And for me, that's mentally challenging to do it, but it can be successful. Yeah,
for sure. So the mental and physical side of things, I think, as we were talking earlier, is only sort of a small portion of what makes hunting hard. And I know you got a lot of feedback through Instagram and stuff like that, and some different views on why people thought hunting was hard. And I know for Kelly and I, sometimes it's the unexpected things, like bear spray blowing up in your pocket. Yeah, your dog jumping off a cliff.
Yep. a knee twist and having to like
Yeah, and having to drag your leg for
carry my
14
leg.
kilometers.
Yeah, that took
So
a whole day to get out.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that come up when you're hunting, and as you said, as we were talking today, there's more to it. So, what other things have come up for you guys other than the mental and physical side of things?
I liked where Jenny was talking about ego, because it was one thing that I put it out there on Instagram saying like, why is hunting hard? Get your feedback. We're doing this live recording. And one of the things that came back, and I was trying to make sense of it, was that a bunch of people were saying, well, hunting should be hard. It should be challenging. I want to climb the biggest mountain. I want to shoot the biggest animal. I want to like make it hard. And if it wasn't hard, I wouldn't enjoy it. And I had a hard time, like heck, if we could have shot a bison on the first day and spent like 7 days like hanging around exploring the north and snowmobiling around and backcountry skiing, like I'm all in for that. So like I don't actually process that like it's got to be challenging, it's got to be hard. But I'm curious if anybody like has that feeling of like you need that challenge to make it better for you.
Yeah, I think for me, that side of it, I think in those really challenging, difficult situations, you often learn something about yourself. You know how far you can push your body. You know the types of conditions that you can live in. And I think when you come back from something like that, Jesse and Tash know what it's like to sleep outside in minus 30 or whatever next to a campfire without any shelter and survive something like that and be in like a very unforgiving part of the world and come back from something. I think you definitely change as a person when you come up against challenges like that. So I think there is a good side of it too. But
Yeah, I'm kind of in both camps. I don't know about I guess generalizing from the ego perspective. I don't know. I don't approach it from an ego perspective, but I feel like with the bigger challenge, there's an element of almost like wanting to respect the animal through that biggest challenge, and like just the memories. I think we did a quick video here. I can't remember. That was for one campfire, I think. But my grandpa passed away last year, and he was going through dementia, and it got super. It was super challenging at the end there. But like every time I'd bring up a picture of the elk, or tell him some stories, he would pull out those stories like nothing. It was always like the hardest ones, like where he was, packing a moose out and fell in the river and he couldn't get his pack off, and like he's got buddies helping him out. And there's just something that strikes me about those kind of stories that you like tell your kids. And there's just so many levels of this that but at the same time, like, I had an LEH doe tag this year. I had tons of research on this area. I went up there, I harvested a doe, and that I don't really complain about that either. So I'm kind of in both camps. I don't mind both sides.
One of the things I'll add to this discussion, I think I've gone through some cycles. I bet you can all kind of relate to this. That seems to be making hunting hard is the whole growth of social media into hunting. I think is added a layer. I mean, there's a good part to it because we're communicating and we're using it as a vehicle to learn, but it's also created turned up the notch a little bit on making hunting hard. Yeah, I mean, see a few heads doing this, right? Like you get caught in this, you see all these other people having success, and there's the meme out there, the old lady looking at the computer is like, oh, apparently I'm the only one in North America that didn't get a whitetail buck this year, and it, it's you get caught up and you feel that and you take that pressure. I've done this. I've taken that pressure out, right? And it's this pressure to perform. You got to get something. People are like, how did you do? How did you do on that elk trip? And it's like, well, I didn't get anything. And you just come back and you're going, oh, so-and-so got one, and it seems to be making hunting harder than what it needed to be. And it wasn't until I just sort of like stepped back from that because I just get sucked into that vortex a little bit, and they just said, just release that and let it go, not follow a lot of stuff on social media. And it just sort of seemed to like change my success because it changed my expectations, a little bit. So I don't know if you'd agree that social media is making hunting harder. Yeah, he's flipping through his phone right now going, oh, look at this buck, man. I didn't get one like that.
Yeah, it definitely has like a false expectation aspect to it for sure. I kind of see that in the sheep, like when we were going out for the sheep hunt and, I don't know. It just it seems easier when you're scrolling through your Instagram, but when you're out there and you're doing it yourself, it's not easy. What do they say? The sheep you take is going to be as old as when you started. You know, it's going to take you 8 years basically to get a sheep. So, yeah, I think there's definitely a false expectation around this social media vibe.
Yeah, and you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt too. I mean, you look at, you might see a guy that posts, oh, I got a big whitetail buck this year. I got a big bull elk. Oh, I got a really nice sheep. And it's like, oh, that's once a week he posted one of those photos. It's like the amount of effort and days that he put in to get each one of those. It's like, it's not like, oh, yeah, I went out on Monday and I shot a nice whitetail buck. Wednesday I went out and I got my elk. I got my sheep on Friday. It's like there was probably a lot of time and effort, but you just see the reward of all that hard effort put into it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and that's kind of the unfortunate thing is you don't get that story behind those pictures. So,
Except I grew up in a family where I had stories like, yeah, your uncle and I, we went up to such and such a road in the morning. We got 2 bull moose right on the road. We came home, we hung them up, and then, we went out for an evening hunt, and I got this 7-point bull elk. 4 years, and I still haven't got one yet. So.
yeah, a little luck.
Dylan, I don't know who commented on your photo, and we don't know their situation, but I fantasize about driving along a road and having a deer, anything, bear jump out and bang and go home and bada bing, bada boom. Like, I don't want to climb a mountain if I don't have to.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because we live in an area, the further you travel, the better chance of success. Like, people are like, how did you shoot a caribou and a goat in your first 2 years? And I'm like, well, that's because we went freaking far. Like, I think where we treaded for the goat, like, nobody's ever, long story short, I had to call a CEO because I thought I clipped a goat that was half alive still. And they're like, where are you, honey? And I looked at a map, I'm like, I don't know. These mountains are not named. And I was by myself. But anyways. So I fantasize about that. And just one more thing about why hunting's hard is I didn't grow up around hunters. So I don't know anybody that hunted. And I'm addicted to mountain hunting and trying to find a partner ready to go at certain dates. This is worse than online dating. Y'all think Tinder is hard? Try, because everybody has their own cliques and crews, and you're just new and you're trying to prove yourself. Trying to find somebody that knows what they're doing to go with you to these things it's tough, because you have to be compatible, and nobody should take it personally. Somebody likes to talk. I don't like to talk. Don't take it personally.
Someone you trust, you can rely on them.
Safety first.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like trying to find a bass player.
Yeah.
Just never show up.
And the thing is, take your time. It's okay. Relationships take a long time to build.
You got something to add to that?
Putting it out there. Yeah, why are you laughing, huh? Yeah.
I think
Everybody's
you got
looking at me.
something-
I was still on the ego trip thing, and I was just thinking about what I was gonna. I had an ego thing happen, and it was kind of profound for me on this last trip. So I'm just back from a bison hunt, and it's the first time we've done this, and so the hunt went pretty well. We actually kind of fluked the bull on like day 4 of the hunt, and it was a bull that was standing in the middle of the road, and one of the guys rode up on a snow machine and got it, and. But up till then, my hunting partner and I, Jenny, had been skiing through the woods on our skis, following bison tracks and sneaking through the woods like we're whitetail hunting bison. And it was really fun. It was really fun to combine these two things, right? Obviously. And on day 5, we were on tracks and we're skinning up. And this day, Sean, the film guy, we had a cameraman come on this hunt with us, and he was following me on snowshoes. So we were on fresh tracks and we're sneaking up, and we end up kind of figuring on where these bison are going, and we take a little tack above them and sneak across and hear crack, and next thing you know, I see a bison down below us, and so I sort of ski down to a tree where I can get a rest, and I lean over a branch on a tree, and I'm looking down, and I see one bison go by, and then I lock in on the opening which I saw the bison go by. Now, in previous days of hunting, I'd figured out that when you see one bison go by, don't follow that bison and try and find a shot at it. Stay on the spot that you saw it go through and wait for the next one to come through, because they're like a train going by, one after another. And they're also like a sheet of like 4x8 piece of plywood going by. And you can't actually pick a spot where like the legs, like I couldn't even tell between the ass and the leg, like the head and the ass. They're pretty nondescript, especially in sort of darker timber. So I'd figured this out by day 5. Just stick on the spot and wait for the next one to step in, pick a spot behind the leg, shoot the lungs, dead bison. So bang, shot goes off, film crew's behind me. I'm like, I think that was a 100% shot. I feel totally good about it. And we sit around and we wait for half an hour, because what you do. And then we ski down to the bison, and sure enough, it was dead there. Fantastic. And it was a baby bison. It was like a 8 month, or I don't know, whenever they would have dropped their calves, like maybe, I don't know, sometime in the spring. So it's a year, not even a yearling, right? So, and I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, oh, well, on one hand, I'm like, it's legal, totally cool. Like, you can shoot cows or bulls, no problem. And, but in that moment, I was like, oh man, I wish this was a bigger bison so I could tell the story through social media. And I've got this film crew here, and I'm like, this would be so cool if this was a bigger animal. And I was like, that's just stupid. Like, not only is this like 400 pounds of the best meat I'll ever eat in my life, like these are grazers. They have fat on them, which is something that us as hunters don't get to experience, like, ever. So like, and this thing gave itself to me. Like it was a gift from the bison gods to us. It was a beautiful, clean kill. It's a dead animal. We're halfway up the frickin' mountain, so like 2,000-pound bull bison's not ideal for packing out on your skis. So like, this was a total gift. But in that moment, I was like, my ego was just like, damn it, this should be a big bull, and it'd be way cooler if it was. And then I kind of just like brought myself back from that edge. I'm like, no, and I was like, you know what? I want to tell this story. We're going to show this in the video. We're going to show that we got a calf. We're going to talk about it. I'm talking about it here, like that. It's not all about big bucks and big bulls. It's about filling your freezer. And I did it. I hunted the way I wanted to hunt. I still hunted up on this bison. That's what I wanted to do. I didn't fluke it in the middle of the road. And for me, it was a better hunt. There was challenge there. Figured it out over 5 days. And to me, that is the success is going to be when we enjoyed the tenderloin that night. Like, let me tell you, that was all right. So anyways, I'm trying to check my ego at the door. And it's hard to do because that social media, like, I'm just dying to post pictures of big dead things on my social media to try and like bump up my numbers, and my likes. But I'm trying not to. I'm trying to control it. Anyways.
Anything else you guys want to add?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, Kelly and I were talking about this in the back about, one of the things that we think that makes hunting hard is hunting regulations themselves. The rules that we have to play by make this a very complicated endeavor, and the consequences of breaking the rules are severe, like for punishment on our side, and potentially losing hunting privileges, but also the cost of an animal that wasn't legally supposed to be taken. And I grew up hunting elk in the Kootenays when it was like a 3-point or better bull, and it was just like every year I got a bull. It's like, yeah, that's a 3.5, whatever. It's legal, right? And hunting was easy. Hunting elk was easy with those regulations. And then they brought in a 6-point regulation. And, a tine had to be a certain length in order to make it a legal 6-point. Now all of a sudden I'm hunting elk like I would be hunting sheep. I got to get the spotting scope out and put it on this thing, and and this sort of stuff. Curtis started coming along, getting into hunting. He's young, and it's sort of like, there's this, it's only a 3, no, it's only a 4-point. Okay, get ready, right? That's a button. No, it's only a 5-point. Year after year after year, it's like I never could put him on. That is a legal 6-point bull. Get ready, and that made hunting, very, very difficult. And that's just an artifact of, wildlife management and the numbers of hunters out there, like the rules we put on themselves. But it does make things a lot harder now.
He still hasn't put me on a 6-point bull, by the way. I'm still waiting for that.
How many of you guys are new hunters within like the last couple of years? Nice. Good. How many of you guys have mentors to help you through this whole thing? A couple of that. Nice. That's good. Yeah. Kelly and I went through this whole thing the first couple of years, at least before we started doing the podcast, kind of just like winging it basically, and just learning from repeated mistakes over and over and over again. And
You had a little experience before.
a little bit, but not much. It's not like we had someone to take us out and show us stuff and give us tips and that. But it is very rewarding to learn this stuff on your own from your own mistakes and sort of grow that way. But that being said, when you have people with a lot of, experience, it's nice to have some advice from people who've been hunting for a while. So through all the mistakes that you guys have made, what kind of advice do you have for brand new hunters that are going out there, they're feeling discouraged because it is challenging and it is hard? So what advice, Mark? I think, do you got the most, or who's one of you? Probably got the most
he's
experience.
only 28.
Yeah.
I'm 54.
I didn't want to make you feel old. That's why I said that.
No, 54. Yeah. I getting prepared for this podcast, I was thinking back on that and sort of going, okay, at this point in my life, what are the things that have changed and brought success to me? Because I feel like I'm peaking now. Like I'm hitting my stride in my hunting career now. I'm having a great time. I'm filling freezers, and sort of I reflect back on this and go like, hey, what is it? How do I explain this? And basically, I broken the way I hunt down into a system. And basically, I start, and I think a lot of you probably do that, that have hunted, with basically developing a hunt plan. Like it starts in the office, back at home, where you're looking at maps, you're looking at Google Earth, you're looking for, reports in the area, or you're scanning, the forums and stuff to see what, knowledge that you can build. You're looking at the maps, there's water here, there's some heavy timber here, there's a bench there, there's some open, maybe this is where they're going to feed in the evening. And so you get that plan, developed. And yeah, that's what I do. That's the approach I start. One of the things that I've added to that is I've started adding multiple areas. So when I go into my hunt, it's like, this is area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So as I check off, like this, I got my areas pre-planned out, and I'm like, yeah, I've been doing that like mentally for a lot of my life. Now Google Earth has come along, and I got some more tools I didn't have when I was a kid. And then it's sort of like, okay, when I go out, then what am I doing? And what I'm doing is this area that I've identified, somewhere in there, in a corner tucked away, is probably a buck or a bull that I'm looking for. I got to cover all this ground to find the zone where these animals are living. So I'm going through these areas, and I'm collecting intel, just like a military scout. What is this telling me? What is that telling me? This is there. They're not here. Oh, there's a trail. Okay, something was here yesterday. Their poop pellets are this, which is telling me they're eating this type of plant material, so I need to go there. So I'm constantly on a daily system, sort of like, what is the on-the-ground information telling me? I'm feeding it back into this and adjusting my plan. At the end of the day, what did all this information tell me? What's my plan for tomorrow? And I just sort of, that's a system that I've developed that I apply over and over, and I'm kind of like, that's what I've been going through, and that's definitely been part of my success. I think the other part of it is I broadened out what I hunt. We were talking about this. I think British Columbia is very heavily focused on big game, and a few years ago, I'm just like, rifle stays at home, grab the camp gear and stuff, shotgun 22, and I'll actually go on like extended trips, and I do nothing but hunt grouse and rabbits. Picked up waterfowl hunting. It's just like the best. Turkey hunt in the springtime, and all of a sudden it's like, a couple of grouse, a few ducks and a couple of rabbits and all this stuff. It starts to add up, and it's like they're all meals, and all of a sudden I'm like, I got a lot more in my freezer, even if I don't get a deer. It's like half a dozen Canada geese and you've got yourself a white-tailed deer, right? So, I mean, that's another part, just sort of expanding, what we have available to us in this province that's really, really changed things for me.
Yeah, I liked I kind of approach my hunting a bit, I don't want to say scientifically. I have a hypothesis of why I think a deer might be there, and then I test the hypothesis. And then at the end of every hunt, I kind of have a habit of kind of, asking myself, what did I learn? Like, within the camp, I usually do this. At the end of the day, we say, what did we learn today? Like, what did you learn? What did you pick up? And that bits of information that everybody picked up, might add up to creating a new hypothesis for the next day that you test out, and then you try that out. I think it's good to try that, just to continue to try new things and figure out what works, and then eventually something works, and then I just try that over and over again.
I think you're next in line, Curtis. For
Me, hey, for
experience.
tips?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my tip is mentor somebody. You know, everyone always wants to be like, hey, I want to go out with somebody who really knows what they're doing. You know, I'm going to just kind of follow, step back, watch what they're doing. And that's great to an extent. Like I grew up for, you know, most of my childhood and teenage years, like hunting behind him and just kind of stepping back and always following. And in the last couple of years, I've had some of my best friends really start getting into hunting. And they're like, hey, man, like, you know everything about hunting, like, can you take me out and show me? And to myself, I'm like, wow, geez, like, I don't know that much. But to somebody who doesn't have as much experience, you're that next person. And I've probably learned as much, if not more, taking my friends out and being pushed into that guide position, the guy who's actually like kind of spearheading the hunt. As I did when I was just kind of stepping back and learning it, it really forces you to be like, okay, like, we're going to go up here because of this. And yeah, even if you think that, you know, hey, I've only been hunting for 2 years and one of my buddies wants me to take him out and show him how to start hunting, you've got 2 years of experience on him, and it will definitely help you learn a lot.
Jenny, got anything to add?
Curtis, are you on geese plucking duty? Your father just said that you've taken up upland hunting now, so I'm curious who's plucking all those feathers.
We scan them.
Oh. I'm asking because I got my first experience plucking this season, and man, it was a pain in the butt. And I'm like, who's plucking all these birds you're shooting?
Geese are brutal. Ducks aren't bad.
Okay. It was a pheasant, so. Anyways.
Option C.
I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I really kind of vibed off what you just said there, because even if you just got a year in, somebody else is looking for some sort of guidance, and hey, partner up and help each other out. All my mentors, actually, most of my mentors are sitting in this room right now. And I'm so thankful to see all these faces here because I'm excited of the potential community and conversations and friendships that could happen tonight based on this podcast. Like, it doesn't matter in what situation you're all, nobody's actually figured out hunting. We can all try to optimize and guess. So help each other out. And I really liked what you said there.
Yeah, from my perspective, just put one foot out there and then another foot and just keep walking. We're lucky in BC to have all this public land. And a lot of folks, I think, get paralyzed with like, okay, there's too many options. There's too many places. How do I know where to go to make sure I get an animal? And I kind of switched my thinking to like, well, I'm not thinking, I don't really care if I get an animal. I shifted it to like, where can I go to get a good experience or a good day, or, you know, it's more about what you're going to see that day. And I've started seeing more animals that way. It's kind of like, you know, a roundabout way to get there. But I relate to Dylan's comments because, you know, Mike gets a bunch of texts from me all the time of Google Maps, and I've got like a blue line and a red line, and if the wind's going this way, then we're taking the blue line. But if we're going, you know, if it's going the other way, I have all these hypotheses, and you know, I'm over planning. But I kind of feel like when you get a foundation of knowledge there, you can kind of step away from that a little bit. You can start trusting yourself a little bit more, and then things happen a little more naturally. But it's kind of, you definitely have to put yourself out there and just get experience, whatever that looks like, however it rolls out. You can't predict it. But once you kind of get that foundation, you can start trusting yourself. And how long have we been hunting now? 5 years? 6? I'm just feeling that now. Like, I'm just feeling that. And only with certain species, like mule deer, basically. I kind of feel like I know, based on the conditions or the location, where I'm going to see mule deer. And just looking in those spots, oh, boom, there's mule deer. Not quite that easy, but like I've had some days like that where it's like, oh, shit, I thought there would be one right there. But it takes time.
I think if I was going to add one more thing, you know, so a hunt system, like a hypothesis testing it. That's exactly, would have been the words I used, just because sort of have a sciencey background, ecology background. That's how I approach hunting, diversifying what I hunt, more small game. And I think the third piece for me, which has really turned hunting around and allowed me to see a lot more success in my later part of my life, is I've had some things happen hunting, which I actually believe there's something else going on out there than just raw biology. If you want to go back to the podcast I was with you guys, episode 65 or 67, around there, I talked about an experience when my grandfather passed away, and through a whitetail buck, I ended up, my grandfather came to me on a hunt. I won't tell that story. Go listen to their podcast. But there has been things like that have happened out there. Some unexplainable things where it's almost like nature's speaking to me, wildlife is speaking to me, and I've opened up my mind to that metaphysically there is something else going on out there, that as humans, scientifically, ecologically, we think of these things as biological units, just may not be the reality out there. And when I've done that, my frame of mind when I'm hunting is very different. I'm not trying to force the situation. I want to get something. Like, I feel like if I'm forcing, trying to make this happen, I don't see anything. But when I'm in this different frame of mind of kind of just like, what's the force telling me? What's clues are being put? What am I being told? Where should I go? Like, I'm kind of letting it guide me. Things are happening much more naturally and more fluid. And, I believe a lot more of the animals that I've been getting, in the latter part of my years, I'm meant to take those animals. They're actually being put in front of me because that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know if it's just something to do with age. You start to kind of like get more philosophical as you get older, but there's something out there. There's something very different. And if you can start to feel that when you're hunting, all I'd say is don't brush it off. Like, open up to those thoughts and those feelings. Like, sit there in that moment and try and put some meaning to it, because, like I said, I think as far as a hunter and a prey animal out there, there's a larger thing going on. And if you can open up and tap into that, I think things might really change.
Absolutely. To wrap things up, because we're running out of time, if hunting was easy, would you still do it? Dylan?
Let me just put down my beer. If hunting was easy, I still. Well, this kind of goes back to that question of like I hunt so much that like hunting could be more easy for sure. Like, I can think of like where I've hunted mule deer. Since I was a kid, it's a very low success rate for that hunt. Like, I think I've killed 5 bucks in 30 years of going to the same spot, but I still go back there because I've always enjoyed the hunt. There's always opportunity. There's always a great hunt involved. And then I've got spots where I've hunted whitetail deer that I've killed 1 or more deer every year for 30 years. So the hunter success is much higher in those in different areas. Both equally challenging hunts, mind you. Like, the whitetail hunt is super challenging, but it's much more successful. I do know spots that I can go hunt mule deer, and it'll take a day or two, like, to get a mule deer, but I choose to go climb a mountain and have a different experience. So I think there is something to be said for the experience. Like, certainly climbing a mountain, camping in the alpine, spotting animals, like, it's such a wonderful experience that everybody should do it. I don't think it's necessarily the most productive hunting, but for sure, I'd do it, and I'll keep doing it. But I wish elk hunting was easier, because like I'd like to have an elk every year, and like I came up short like last year, a couple of years ago, it came out short, and it was challenging going through a year without elk burger in your freezer. I don't know how people do it. Yeah. Like, yeah, torture. Anyways, yeah, for sure. I think it goes both ways.
I was thinking about, and I was, in discussion with Dylan today and Mark and Jenny. My answer to this question was originally no. Like, I would not hunt if it was easy. But if you think, what's the baseline of easy and hard? Because right now we're hunting in BC and we're all on public land. How easy is that really going to be? Period. I mean, a deer can walk out on the road and you can shoot it, but you still got to deal with it. You still got, like, there's a lot of work at home. I mean, if at some point, farming is probably as easy as it can get if you're, hunting on if you're hunting on private land and it's a very small area. It's almost like farming. You're harvesting. We actually did the pig. We had some pigs and we harvested those, and even doing that makes you feel a little better than just going to the grocery store and picking up a sealed package of meat, right? So I don't know. I'm kind of shifting this answer a little bit from no to yes, because I feel like the baseline of hunting in BC is already going to be very hard. And if it's a little easier sometimes, I'm not totally opposed to that. It's a different experience, and there's nothing wrong with either experience. I keep going back to this doe hunt. Like, that was it was still a backpack hunt. So from that perspective, it's hard. I was out there by myself. I packed the deer out. But, compared to the hardest hunts we've ever done, or sheep hunting and all these pinnacle type hunts that I would rate as easy, and I don't have any problem with that.
Well, when we talked about this question, like, in my mind, when I was like, well, let's talk about why is hunting so hard, I wasn't thinking about the physical challenge of going up a mountain. I was just thinking, why is it so hard that I see all these new hunters come through our program, through the Eat Well program, and their motivation is to fill their freezer, and I see these. I have something called the First Buck Banquet, which is anybody that's been a successful hunter has been through the program, comes for dinner after they've had their first success, and we have this big long table dinner, and everybody tells their first buck story or first harvest story, and it's a ton of fun, and it's a really welcoming way and supportive way to tell your story, But I have people come that they come back after 7 years, and they're like, I got it done. I got my first buck, and it was a spike buck, and I'm so stoked, and I tell the story. And that's kind of what I was thinking about. Why is it so, it is hard to fill your freezer in British Columbia if you dedicate time. Yeah. So when I say, hunting could be easier, I just mean, you should be able to it'd be great if you could get a buck or a deer in your freezer if you put in a week's worth of effort. Now, a week's worth of effort is not easy. And getting that doe was not easy because you did a pile of research and you psyched out the area and you got the draw and you put a backpack on and you got the deer. But it was a relatively easy hunt.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot easier than your sheep. But, yeah. Anyway, so I think it's a relative concept of being easy. But that was where I was coming from when I was thinking about this.
Dylan, where are these mule deer spots that you don't want to use?
I was going to ask you guys. You were saying, mentor somebody, right? I do you guys take people to your best spots, and then do you everybody's shaking their heads?
Depends how much I like them.
Because I want to take people to a good spot so they have success, right? But I had made the mistake of my girlfriend at the time. She was keen to figure that. So we had this amazing. I took her to my very favorite whitetail spot, and we had a beautiful day. We parked the truck and got daylight out. We snuck up the hill. We were into deer all day as we snuck up. And we got to my favorite rock and we sat down. And sure enough, 2 deer come strolling down this gully. And one's a little buck. And she's got all the time in the world to kind of get comfortable with the idea of shooting it. And so she takes her time. And I'm sort of sitting behind her trying to completely remove my energy of shoot it. I'm kind of hanging out behind, allowing her process. She shoots it. It's a perfect shot. I can see it run off and bounce off a couple of trees. I know what's going down. Pretty cool experience. We go down there. She's certainly the kind of person that wants to do everything. So I'm just standing back. She does everything. She drags her deer off the hill. Still just no high fives. No it's she's still processing. We drag it all the way down in the truck, and we're about 40 yards from the truck, and she's dragging this, and she says, "You know what? I feel pretty good right now. I feel pretty good." So we had we cracked a beer and high fives and hugs at the truck. But anyway, so the next year, we were dating on and off for years, so we were on an off period now, and we're living in 2 different cities, and we're still good friends. So I call her. I said, "So are you gonna go hunting this year?" She's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go hunting." I'm like, "Oh, right now, where are you going hunting?" She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go back to Oliver's spot." She named her deer Oliver, and I was like, "Oliver's spot? You can't go there." And anyways, really should have included it in some kind of a prenup about the hunting spots. Because, yeah, in retrospect. But yeah, I'm mindful of that. Like, you share. Well, this is where I kind of wanted to get to, and I think that I don't know how much time we got. Okay, so probably the hardest thing. Oh, there we go. Lights are off. We're done.
You're done.
Okay.
No, I don't know what happened there.
But by
there
far
we
the
go.
hardest thing is getting information around where to go hunting, and where do you get that information, and how do you find it? And that's kind of what I find is the hardest part. Even on this last trip, going bison, I mined every biologist that I contact with, every person that's been on this hunt. I'm just digging and seeing how much information I can get. And that's the hardest part about hunting is finding that info, figuring out where to go. So I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I would take a Menard hunter, and I have, to my best spots. Friend of mine, Dr. Clayton Lamb, grizzly bear researcher, never got a turkey before in his life. I took him out last spring. He got a turkey first day. I was like, it's not always this good. I took him to my prime number one spot. I wanted him to have a turkey. I wanted him to see success. If it means I don't get one there next year, or whatever, I would always take somebody to the place I know I could be successful, because it's more important that they're successful. So I would. Yeah.
So do you have something drafted up I could look at, the contract, or?
Yeah, we'll get my lawyers will talk. Yeah. You can tell me where the bison are.
Circling back to if hunting's easy or not, girls gotta eat. Yes, for sure. You gotta be crazy to say you don't want, wild meat in your freezer. Of course we'll take it. Mm-hmm. But I think it comes down to there's hunting for meat, and then there's mountain hunting where it's not efficient. It's a lot of money. You don't get to take back the bones, and sometimes you leave bits and pieces behind, like Mark, you were just sharing there on your elk hunt there. So I do those for the mental conditioning and the challenging, because you're stripped away for on average 10 days of all your basic essential needs, and you're just surviving. And that is not hunting for meat. If I was to be honest with everybody in this room, I'm not doing those hunts for meat. So there's two types of hunting. But yes, if hunting was easy, hell yeah, girls gotta eat.
Curtis?
Yeah, I'll keep things short and sweet. I'd still hunt if it was easy.
Nice. Good answer.
Okay, what about Mike?
Well, yeah, I think the whole point of it for me is just to be outside and to enjoy nature and see stuff that you wouldn't normally see. We always talk about one of our first hunts where we got up super early, we're out in the snow, and we watched this owl come down right in front of us and grab a mouse and fly away with it. And, just as the sun's coming up, the sky is kind of red and it's beautiful and the light is, is just unreal. And those are the kind of the moments that you really appreciate when you're out there. And if you didn't hunt, you would miss all those, those special things. And of course, we're out there for meat. And of course, we all want that. So yeah, I would keep doing it.
I think at that moment too, I never used to like fall that much. I like winter because I like to ski. I like summer for obvious reasons. But then as soon as we start hunting, and that moment comes to mind right away. Because you're up in elevation, all the trees are changing, and then at that moment on, fall has now become one of my favorite seasons. So it's just interesting how you value that a lot more when you're participating and you're hunting, and yeah, it's cool.
Mark, earlier today we were out for lunch and you shared a quote with us, which I thought was kind of a cool way to wrap up this podcast.
One of my favorite books is called Meditations on Hunting, and it was written by a Spanish hunter and philosopher in the late 1940s. And he in his book he said, hunting is what one species does to take possession of another species. That in a simple term, that's what hunting is. Hunting is not unique to humans. It occurs throughout the entire animal kingdom. So when I give this little bit of a quote, just kind of think about that. When I use the word hunter, Jose is talking about any animal in the animal kingdom. And Jose said, hunters evolved specialized skills for hunting particular groups of prey. Prey species evolved unique abilities to evade their hunter. For every tactic the hunter developed, prey species developed a counter tactic. Prey species instinctively foresee their hunter, and more often than not, they evade their hunter. The essence of hunting, how does it go here now? The essence of hunting is simply a contest between two systems of instincts. The instinct to capture and the instinct to evade is the greatest instrument that nature uses to regulate life on the planet. Hunting is hard. It's hard because nature has designed it to be hard. And being a hunter in a system that is as powerful a system as climate change, as the movement of the continents, I think for me puts it into perspective. It's hard because it's supposed to be hard.
Well said.
Yeah. We've got a few minutes left to do a bit of Q&A. Does anyone have questions they want to ask?
So you guys said that often the hunting starts in your office or at the computer or doing the research. So when you're doing your research, let's just take mule deer, for example. When you start your research and you sit down and you're looking at the topographical maps, Google Maps, whatever, you mentioned there's lots of different tools now. What are some of the things you're looking for to narrow it down? Obviously, we have a huge province. So, you look at that province, you look at the species you want. What are maybe 3 things that you do to narrow that down so you can have a more successful hunt?
I'll leave it to Kelly because he loves doing that.
I love all that stuff.
He just looks on a hillside and there's a mule.
No, well, I mean, like slope is obviously like south-facing slopes, north-facing slopes, what season it is. Vegetation is going to be different on each side. So it kind of, that's a big one that we hear a lot. The one I started relying on in the last year or so is elevation and vegetation that grows in different elevation bands. I found was super helpful, especially with mule deer. Because, once I started figuring out like the Douglas fir versus the ponderosa levels, and you can find a lot of information and overlays that you can put on certain things. So once I started focusing on that, I was actually running into more, not just mule deer, but more bucks, because I feel like they're generally a little bit higher up. So yeah, that's been working out for me so far in the last season.
I would sort of start one level up though. Like I think that's the analysis I get to once I pick a general area to go, and I think that's the hardest part is like, okay, where do I start? I mean, that's the most common question I get. It's like, where do I start? Where do I go hunting? And for me, that starts with a phone call to a mentor or to somebody that has knowledge. And then if I can glean a bit of information out, like they may not tell you exactly where to go, but they might at least tell you like, north of Kamloops is a good place to go. And then as you start to like Google around a little bit, you'll start to mine the hunting forums, and you'll see that there's a lot of guys talking about Clearwater and hunting around Clearwater. And then as you I think
we'll have to redact those names.
What's that?
We'll have to redact those names.
I think there's an inside joke on BC hunting that says like Clearwater is the best spot in BC to go mule deer hunting. But I would start there and just start mining information. Like for me, I'm very lucky. Like I grew up with a bunch of hunters that were 20, 30 years older than me that have already explored all of British Columbia and been up every mountain and every trail, and so now they're all too old to hunt all the spots, so they're perfectly willing to tell me about these spots. And so I just have this Rolodex of cool places I want to go. So I would say mine those older mentors and join your Fish and Game Club in your community or the BHA here and anywhere in BC, because there's a lot of people that have that knowledge. And I've got spots that I've hunted I've hunted for a bunch of years. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm kind of done with that spot. I'm moving on. I'd be happy to tell you about it. So you Jenny, I've told you several times. Okay, anyways, moving on. You just don't listen to my advice.
I have them pinned on a Google Maps. I'm getting there.
One of the other things, specifically to mule deer, there's been some scientific, studies done, in Idaho and Montana where they do a lot of mule deer research. And there's a scientist at the University of Montana named Dr. Hebblewhite. There's a really good presentation online. You can look him up. The BC Wildlife Federation sponsored it in Kelowna. one of the things he said about mule deer was their number one food source, like if they had a choice, is actually wildflowers. Highly nutritious. They will target those in the alpine basins early in the year. It's their number one food source. Aspen or deciduous ecosystems throughout North America, mule deer that predominantly live in aspen ecosystems are much more stable. Their populations, they don't fluctuate as much because basically everything in an aspen ecosystem a mule deer can eat. So there's actually a really good source. If you could find that YouTube video and stuff, he imparts a lot of good stuff about mule deer.
Hi. When I first started hunting, I got a lot of advice, but it took me a long time to separate the fact from fiction. Do you have any advice for new hunters to separate out the old wives' tales from the kind of pearls of wisdom?
If it's in one of those forums, that's the fiction stuff.
The best way is to go check it out, like boots on the ground, like explore and get out there. And you know, I think that's, I mean, putting miles on and just like go and explore what's over the next ridge. Like, you guys are all really lucky. Like, you guys are starting this out with, like, Google Earth actually tells you what's on the other side of the hill. Like, there was a time when you actually had to climb over the mountain to see what was there. And I'm old enough to know what that looked that time.
Any other questions out there?
Just in terms of effort to meat ratio, if you could only hunt one animal from now for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Ducks.
Wild turkey.
Yeah, we've got a lot of opportunities for snowshoe hare in Kelowna, so that's a good
Not
one.
a lot of meat. Like there. Well, I mean, you can. What is the limit? 10 or something like that? Yeah, I
10 a
guess.
day.
Yeah, that's a lot of meat.
August 1st to June 30th or something.
Yeah.
Whitetail does. So we have a fairly liberal open season for whitetail does in British Columbia. We're trying to reduce the number of whitetail does in order to reduce the pressure on our mule deer herd. So a number of places in southern BC, and actually there's populations throughout Merritt, Kamloops that are growing populations of whitetail. So if you can figure out a spot where a few whitetails live and you have a good spot to sit, you should be able to successfully harvest a whitetail every year. Put the time in.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
This is an extremely conflicting question for me because I'm 2 years in. And so I don't actually have an experienced mentor where I go out into the woods with. Like, I've been bumbling by myself with other people fresh off the core test too. And for 2 years, I haven't been able to shoot a grouse, a duck, a bear, what else? A rabbit. So I don't know. I just want to be honest. If anybody feels my pain here, I still have never shot my own deer. So all the easy game, yeah. Sorry, that was not helpful for you. But just in case you bumbled around just in case you bumbled around, like, all the advice if you gather tonight is go get an actual mentor and don't try to don't be stubborn like me and try to do things by yourself.
You did hit on something that it's actually probably worth mentioning. Like, the bear population in British Columbia, the black bear population is very high and growing, and it makes great table fare, and it's an easy hunt, relatively speaking, to other hunts. So, sorry, Kelly's like shaking his head at me.
Don't leave it to the last 10 minutes before dark.
Yeah, there was maybe a lesson learned
lesson
there.
learned.
But yeah, definitely black bear hunting. I got a number of friends that are keen on it. We're planning a black bear hunt this year. There's 2 seasons. There's a spring season and a fall season, so there's lots of opportunity to get after it. And the table fare is good as long as you take care of the meat. So something to think about.
I agree with the whitetail and the bear. I think those are the two for me. I think whitetail was my first harvest of whitetail doe.
Yeah, same for me, actually. Yeah, some of the best meat we've had, yeah. We got one more question in the back. We'll take 2 more. Oh, you got the mic already. Go for it.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to hear your opinion about technology and the laws and how easy it is to hunt. Technology is obviously catching up. I think using drones now is illegal to hunt. Trail cams connected to cell phone networks are talking about making those illegal. I don't think they are yet. We now have rifle scope combinations that really bring into question fair chase. Distance-wise and everything. I'd like to hear your opinion about technology, the ethics of hunting, what's catching up to what. Like I said, just like to hear your opinions on where do we draw the line of it's legal, yes, but we're really getting to the idea of fair chase and is this rifle scope set up really ethically okay? And other technology opinions, please.
You have another 2 hours to sit here and listen to that?
How much time do we have?
It's an issue. It's a big issue. It's hard to regulate stuff and completely close the gap on technology making wildlife more vulnerable, which vulnerability leads to excessive harvest, which then impacts wildlife populations and takes away all of us. It's a slippery slope. You get to a point where you just cannot close the gap on everything. The best way is peer-to-peer. If you believe in something in your heart, you don't use the technology. Let people know. Be a leader. Take a flack. I don't use a trail camera. Never will. Don't believe in it. If you want to, fill your boots. You're going to have more impact on people that way. And I think the single biggest threat of technology we have in hunting is those things right there, our cell phones. And it's people phoning people back and forth and using drop pins and all that kind of stuff. And that's something I'd be more concerned about a hunting community and a conversation around the use of communication devices than any weapon type system that's out there.
That's a good answer. Anybody, you guys add anything?
No, but we came up against that on this recent bison hunt. We acknowledged that we were on WhatsApp. We had all our group on WhatsApp, and you can do a location for where you are. And then it was like we had the ethical dilemma. We're like, okay, well, we know where we all are. So if we're like pushing a herd of bison around, I know where you are. So that gives me a distinct advantage of where to set up. And I've never had a thought about that before. So we ended up managing for that. Like we actually took that out of our ability to hunt them because I felt like it's probably illegal, or it will be, or certainly unethical. But it was something that, came up for us for sure. And on the piece of cell phones, like just the ability for like all the apps that are available for like mapping and information, and like it just makes it so much easier. It makes it, so definitely changing things for sure. But
Yeah, hard to keep up because it's moving so fast. So we got one more question in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, they've turned into or been deemed a nuisance animal recently, wild hogs or boars or a combination thereof. Have you all hunted wild hogs here in BC? I know they're moving across from Saskatchewan, Alberta into BC yet. Any of you have experience with that?
do you know where they are?
I would hunt them if I knew where they were. Mark's the expert. I think he did an episode on this.
Well, Ryan Brook is the expert. Yeah, we actually, one of our early podcast episodes, we flew to the University of Saskatchewan and went with Dr. Ryan Brook, who's kind of the leading authority on the wild invasive pigs in the province. There are a few small populations in BC. BC's done a pretty good job at kind of controlling them. We've got some reports this year that they may be in the Wells Gray area. They've been seen up there. The basic message from Ryan is, and this is everywhere in the world where invasive pigs are a problem, hunting is not the solution. Hunting actually makes it worse. If you want to control invasive wild pigs, you have to 100% kill every pig in a group called the sounder. Hunting tends to remove one or two pigs. It gets them wise. It makes them nocturnal. It pushes them. It expands their range and stuff. So if it ever becomes an issue here in British Columbia from a conservation perspective, I hope the hunting community comes up and says, we know from science hunting is not the solution. We need a province-led control, but they do taste good.
Well, thank you to everybody for coming out. This is pretty awesome. I'm kind of left speechless by the fact that all you guys would come out and spend time with us and spend money to be here. Jenny put a ton of work into putting this all together, so round of applause for Jenny.
Thank you.
And backcountry hunters and anglers is obviously, a big part of making this happen too. Filson gave us the space. This has been pretty awesome. And Stanley Park Brewing for keeping us lubricated here, Anything else you guys want to add?
No, it's been a ton of fun. It's great to see everybody.
Yeah.
So let's go
Awesome.
eat.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Cheers.
Yeah, there's more beer. Hang out. Have some fun. This episode of Rookie Hunter was brought to you by the Wild Sheep Foundation, Sitka Gear, and North Arm Knives. As always, it is hosted by Kelly Mullner and myself, Mike Peterson. It is recorded, edited, and produced at Mountain Stream Audio Productions in beautiful Kelowna, British Columbia. Original music written by the one and only Kelly Mullner with help from Graham Ord, Darcy Booth, and Chip Sleedermean. If you want to help us out, there's one thing you can do. You can go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And don't forget to subscribe. For more on the show, head over to our website, theRookieHunter.com.